Have a seat. Everybody have a seat. You know, they wondered how we were going to do these town halls when it got bigger, and it's getting bigger, but I still kind of like this process. They've all been fun. I've done probably now over 200, so please don't screw this one up for me, okay, because they've all been great. And I want to start with what Earl had to say, and well, no, I think I need to start by saying, you know, I have a feeling that when March Madness ends, Villanova may be the national champion. I wanted to tell you. I don't understand it, but year in and year out, you're always good. You all go to the games? How many of you go to the games? Because I would be going if I was a student. So much fun. Well, listen, here's what I really want to start off, and I'll talk a little bit about politics, then we'll take questions. Maybe I should tell you a little story. I keep changing. You see, I don't have a teleprompter. We do this thing pretty relaxed. I grew up in a little town outside of Pittsburgh called McKees Rocks. It was a blue-collar town, and so my father carried mail on his back for 29 years. His father was a coal miner. My mother's mother could barely speak English. My mother was the only one to get a high school diploma out of her family. And the town where I grew up, if the wind blew the wrong way, people found themselves out of work. And like, I knew nobody, okay? We didn't know anybody. We didn't get Steelers tickets. We had to sit in the right field bleachers to see the Pirates play. We were just like normal folks. Blue collar, ethnic, God-fearing, common sense, and all that. Life is pretty simple when you keep it simple. So I graduated from high school in that little town and decided I wanted to kind of start a different life. So I went to a small little school in the Midwest. I'm not sure you've ever heard of. It's called Ohio State University, okay? There you go. And when I got there, I found out I had 15 college roommates. Now I know we all are like really upset when we first go to school. Who are we gonna have? What's our roommate? And it doesn't work out, and we've got such angst. And you know, I had 15 of them. And things didn't go so hot in the beginning, and my Uncle Emil had told me, he said, Johnny, whenever you want to change, start at the top. So I called the president's office, because I wanted to have a meeting with him to tell him how I thought about the school. And they wouldn't let me in, but I kept badgering them until they let me in. So there's a good lesson number one. Knock on the door, and knock it down if you have to. When you graduate, or when you're trying to get an internship or whatever, don't take no for an answer. Be a pest. Be a polite pest, but be a pest, okay? So I kept bothering him, and they finally let me in to see the president of the university, and I went in to see him, and he was impressive. He had a beautiful office, beautiful chandeliers, and, well, everything. And I lodged my complaint, and I said, sir, you know, I've been in school about a month, and I'm undecided, but looking at this place, I mean, the furniture, the carpeting, the lighting, I mean, maybe this is the job for me because I'm undecided here at Ohio State. You know, what exactly do you do? So he told me about his fundraising responsibilities, his academic responsibilities, and he told me the next day he was going to go to Washington and have a meeting with President Nixon. And I said, well, sir, there's a number of things I would like to talk to him about also. Could I go with you? Lesson number 2. They can't tell you no if you don't ask, and they can't tell you yes if you don't ask. So he said, no, you can't go. And I said, well, if I write a letter, would you give it to the President of the United States? He said, I guess I could do that. So I went back to my dorm, and I wrote a letter to the President, basically inviting myself to the White House, and I signed it sincerely, John Kasich, P.S. If you would like to discuss this further, just let me know. You know, I've got time. I could come see you. So a couple weeks later, I go down to my mailbox, and there's a letter from the White House, the office of the President. And I open it up, and I go upstairs, and I call home, and my mother answers the phone. Have you had that happen? You call home, Mom answers. This is a little strange call. I said, Mom, I'm going to need an airline ticket. The President of the United States would like to have a meeting with me in the Oval Office. And my mother is shouting, honey, pick up the phone. There's something wrong with Johnny. Honest, true story. So my parents, you know, the mailman and the mailman's wife, and it's like, I'm gone like a month, right? I'm telling them I got to go to the White House. So anyway, they buy me this ticket after a long debate and discussion. And I fly down to Washington. I go through security, and I'm sitting right outside the Oval Office on a little bench. And a guy walks up to me and he says, young man, you're going to get 5 minutes alone with the President of the United States. What do you think? That's pretty amazing, isn't it? I'll tell you what I'm thinking. New jacket, new shirt, new tie, new pants. I didn't come here for 5 lousy minutes, so I'm not coming out. So they open up the door, I walk in, and there's the President. He greets me and I greet him. And the good news is, as an 18-year-old first quarter freshman, I sit down with the President of the United States at his desk for 20 minutes. The bad news is I was a congressman for 18 years, and if you add up all the time I spent in the Oval Office over those 18 years, I peaked out at the age of 18 and should have come to Villanova. How's that, huh? It's a true story, and it's a story that's really about all of us. You know how many times I would sit out in a crowd like this, and there'd be some big shot on the stage, and I kind of look and just kind of think about what I wanted to do with my life. And now I'm standing on the stage and you're looking at me wondering maybe a little bit about your life. Because this is a political campaign, but I kind of in some ways consider that secondary, as hard as that is to believe, because Earl started to touch on it. And I love being at a school a few days from Palm Sunday, with that beautiful, beautiful painting on that wall. You see, I believe that we are all made special. The Lord made us special. No one has ever, this is my opinion, I don't think anybody's ever been made like you before, okay? I'll bet your parents would agree with that, huh? And no one will ever be made like you again. I mean, this is like the best news you can hear. You're unique, and you've been given gifts, and nobody else has them, and they're critical, and they are to be used for the healing of our world. I mean that. I don't mean this is some political gibberish here. You were made to do something that only you can do by the Creator, to give you a chance to lift, to heal, to live a life bigger than yourself. See, a lot of times when I see stories of Americans that leave to go join ISIS, or I read about young people getting themselves involved in gangs, or I read about young kids, or even kids that have graduated from college who get frustrated and lonely and they turn to drugs and they become addicts. I think it's because no one ever told them how special they were, or how special they are. See, because I consider all of us here to be part of a giant mosaic. All of us are here to perform something that's bigger than ourselves. You want to find meaning in life? You dig down in your heart and in your brain and you listen. And sometimes the messages change. But when you listen and you find your purpose, you're on fire. And it's an unquenchable fire if you find it. Let me say one other thing. I don't think the Lord gives a rip about whether you're running for president or whether you're sweeping the floor. I had this big rally in my hometown on Monday night, and I was kind of leaving the school, and I saw this man. I said, "What do you do here, sir?" He says, "Well, I'm the custodian." I said, "That's probably the most important job in the school." And he looked at me and I said, "Well, I can tell you why it's the most important job. Because kids will tell you things that they will never tell anybody else. Am I right?" He said, "You don't know the half of it." What a job. So I believe that if you are a teacher, you sacrifice a lot. Money to change lives. If you're a nurse, you help families to get through the toughest situations. Here in this place, at Villanova, it's a lot of lonely kids, a lot of lonely students. Go out to have some pizza with them. Invite them to go to the basketball game. Does that mean you're changing the world when you do that? What do you think? Do you think no? I think yes. See, because it's all about our ability to do something bigger than ourselves for somebody else. That's what gets entered into the book of life, in my opinion. You know, if you know that, or if you hear that, and you reflect on it, and you believe it, well, you're going to have a great life. Because you're going to have confidence even in the darkest hours. Now, I'm running for president, so I've got to do a bunch of things. I got to figure out what we're going to do about all your student debt. I got to figure out how to ramp up this economy and, you know, get it going again so you can get a job. I've got to figure out what we're going to do to make sure that you believe you have a better chance of seeing a Social Security check than a UFO, okay? The federal government is just engaged in the war on drugs. They're way behind time. Of course, what's so surprising about a behemoth government, you know? I was reading yesterday that this would be a little odd for you, that even, it sort of reminds me of what's happened. We went from the smaller Tyrannosaurus Rex to the big one. Did you read the story about this, the evolution of these dinosaurs? What we need to do with the federal government and all government is to take the big dinosaur and evolve it to the small one so we can get along better, get around better, and solve some problems. That's about transforming all of government, which is tired, old, worn out, frustrated, and unresponsive to all of us. I mean, I have to do that, and I'll get into all of that, okay? But the problems of our country and the solutions, you think they're in a bunch of politicians? That's not where it is. It's in us, where we live. You know, I'll give you a good example. Villanova. I mean, this is a place with incredible spirit. The strength of this school rests in the students. And the leadership is great. I mean, I met the father, he's been here 10 years. He's providing great leadership up here, but if you don't follow and do your job, this school begins to collapse. The faculty doesn't do its job. The strength of our country rests in us. And it rests in our ability to believe that we, you and me, can change the world for the better. Now, I've been in politics. See, I was a 4-year state senator. I was 18 years in Congress, and I've been governor now for 6 years, so that's like a really long time. Okay? Do you realize I'm as idealistic today as I was when I sat in the chair as a student at Ohio State? I believe more in this than ever. And we are fighting for the future of this country, for the spirit of this country. And you know, we're not going to get there by bashing one another. You know, I had a little protest at my event last night. Oh, some of you saw it. You know, it was really... I mean, you know, people get a little revved up and everything, but you know, fortunately, nothing happened. And I went to school in the 70s. I love a good protest. I mean, there's so much fun to see a good protest as long as it's not violent. Don't you like the protest? I love it. So I don't mind if people jump up and yell at where I am. But we need to think about changing the world in empowerment. Now, let me talk about a little bit about the bigger picture, and then we'll take your questions. I was the chairman of the Budget Committee. I spent 10 years of my life fighting to balance a budget. The first budget I offered, there was a Republican budget, the president's budget, there was the Democrat budget, there was the Black Caucus budget, and there was the Kasich budget. So I wrote a budget for America. And I wrote it because somebody challenged me. I said, everything's so bad, what are you going to do about it? I flew to Washington. And I got my staff together. I said, we're going to write a budget for America. They said, okay, that sounds great, John. The White House has 100 doing it, and the Capitol, the Democrats have 100, and we have 6. And I said, I know we're overstaffed, but if we stay out of each other's way, we can get this done. So we had a vote on my budget on the floor of the United States House. And the vote was 405 no and 30 yes. Now, what they do is they flash up all the votes on a big screen, all the reds, 405 of them, and 30 measly greens, and probably 10 of them came from my buddies who were Democrats who said they voted for it, even though it was the dumbest thing they'd ever seen, but they didn't want me to be embarrassed, okay? Why was I doing it? One, Government does not have a right to spend money it doesn't have and put you in debt. Okay, that's just they don't have a right to do that. I mean, there's probably times when we have to be in the hole, when there are circumstances, but by and large, we shouldn't be in the hole. You know why we're in the hole? You know why they don't balance a budget? You know why do you think that? Who can answer that? Who can tell me why they don't balance a budget? Is there nobody in here that can tell me that? What, are we kidding? Yeah, but why? Why do they spend more than they take in? Because it's not their money, and because what they're trying to do is to just make everybody in this room happy. That's what it's about. It's an unwillingness to solve problems because they're worried about re-election. Now, I have to tell you, when you graduate and you get a job, you're not likely on a Monday morning to walk in and tell the boss that the boss is wrong. Okay? Politicians have to tell the boss they're wrong at times. Because if they don't tell them they're wrong, then things go, we got $19 trillion in debt right now. We spend $225 billion paying interest on the debt. Interest on the debt. Think if you took $100 billion of it. Now, I'm not promising you this, but what if we took $100 billion of them and we wiped out a bunch of student debt? Would that be more constructive than paying interest on a $19 trillion debt? Come on, you know you like that idea, okay? But for 10 years I fought for this, for the moral aspect. And the second reason I did it is there are three things that works to create jobs. One is you have to have common sense regulations. Well, you're at a university. How do you like all the rules? Do they all make a lot of sense to you? When you are there any young people here who are starting businesses? Are you starting one back there? What is it? Photography. Okay, well, you don't have many regulations, do you? But see, a lot of small businesses, and maybe you do have regulations, I don't know, but many small businesses, they have the government come and put rules on them. I'll tell you, even in our smallest towns, you want to hang a sign out, they'll come and give you a hard time. You ever heard of Uber? Okay? Do you know who's after Uber? Do you know who's after them? The establishment. So they're trying to put rules on Uber so you can't Uber from here to downtown. You like that? But you see, they can crush you. So we have to have rules. We have to have regulations because people will sometimes do crazy things. So we have to protect. You have the rules to make sure we can protect the public. But oftentimes these rules go way beyond that. And they really represent somebody who has power being able to use power over somebody that doesn't have it. It's human nature. We're all guilty of it. And so anyway, the regulations can kill us. And what they really kill is small business. See, if you put rules in, and I'll give you a perfect example. You know, we had this Wall Street thing, and I can talk about that to the cows come home, but there were a lot of things that didn't go right, obviously. So they put all these rules on these big banks. Big banks can take the rules. You know who can't? The small bank. So the small banks are disappearing, and the big banks are getting bigger. Great idea, isn't it? And when you get out of school, and if you ever decide you want to start a business or you want to buy a home, you know who's going to be likely to give you it? The person in your community. Not some big god-darn institution that's headquartered in New York, or it's not even in America. So we got to be careful about how we put regulations in, and I have a plan to take care of that. Number two, you have to always cut taxes, because taxes give a signal to the job creators that things are safe. And whenever we do cut taxes, first of all, for big business, or for businesses that are not the smallest businesses, we have the highest taxes in the world. You know, they're moving their headquarters out of the country. And let's say that you or I are on the board of directors of a company, and the CEO comes in and says, by the way, we can reduce our taxes by 3/4 if we just move our headquarters out of the country. What do you think you'd tell them? They got shareholders. So we are now providing disincentives for businesses to keep their headquarters here. And then there's another thing. When they're overseas and they make a profit, they pay taxes. When their money comes home, we tax them again. So guess what they do? They leave their profits in Europe. So they invest there, and then you don't have a job. Great, isn't it? So we need to fix that. And on individuals, we always want the taxes to come lower, because the lower the prices are, the more we have in our pockets, the more powerful we are. And so it is always important to cut taxes. And then finally, you've got to have a fiscal plan to balance the budget. And let me tell you, when we talk about balancing budgets, everybody thinks about it's like a trip to the dentist to get a root canal. Let me see here. There you go. Yeah, right here. See this? When my girls are 16, when they were 10 or 11, we were in Florida. And I'm not sure any of you young people will get this, but they said to me, "What's that box over there, Dad?" And I'm like looking. Oh, I said, "I know what that is. That's where Superman changed his clothes." Any of you know what I'm talking about? And then I said, "Girls, your mom and I used to put coins in that to make phone calls." And they're like, "No way," okay? Everything is changing in our lives. Transportation, communication, medicine, and the changes that are coming in medicine are going to be unbelievable. Energy, everything is changing. The only thing that is not changing is the government. So what we have to think about is, how do we lower the costs and deliver better services? Do you all remember, the grown-ups that are here, how much it costs for the fiber in our phones? And then all of a sudden it became a commodity. Now they want to give us this and figure out another way to get their money. I mean, it's all changed. But government is stuck, and it's stuck because people who are in politics are afraid, or they have somebody who's a special interest that beats them over the head. It doesn't have to be that way. In my state, first of all, you know that 405 to 30? 10 years later, we got a balanced budget. We paid down $500 billion of the national debt. Jobs were going like crazy, and when I run against Hillary, she's going to talk about the Clinton economy, which we brought about by balancing the budget and cutting taxes. And in Ohio, we went from a loss of 350,000 jobs to a gain of over 400,000. Our wages are growing faster than the national average. Our pensions are secure. We've cut taxes by $5 billion, more than any government in America. I get more smartphones that way. Anyway, so, and then the final thing that I want to tell you, because when things start growing, we have to make sure that we don't leave anybody behind. And then we're going to go to questions here in a second. I do not believe it is moral in America for the mentally ill to be sleeping under a bridge or living in a prison, okay? You do know that sometimes life is hard. In school, getting ready to graduate. My God, all the big talk I've had all these years, and now I have to produce. You all know 21 Pilots, right? Stressed Out. I mean, it's such a great song. It's one of our favorite songs. It's kind of our campaign theme, although we're not stressed out, but people get stressed out. Please listen to me. There is no shame in being able to say to somebody, "I'm having a problem." Okay? No shame in being able to say that. In fact, there's strength. There's strength in being able to say, "I got a problem." So do not try to fix it yourself. Secondly, I just read today the federal guidelines, and we've been putting federal guidelines along prescription drugs all along, but they're now recommending that you do not give people a dose that lasts for 7 days. Remember that whole thing about a purpose? Don't obscure it by becoming a drug addict. You're not bigger than the drugs. The drugs are bigger than you. You can't beat them. Well, anyway, we do tend to those who become drug addicts. And in our prisons, normally they go into prison, they come out, they meet the drug dealer, they're back in prison. We have an 80% success rate by treating the drug addicts in prison, releasing them into the community, and getting them on their feet and saving a life. I think that's really important. And then finally, we want the work. You got a mom with 2 or 3 kids. She's barely eking by. She's working. So she gets an offer of a pay raise. Can't take it. She loses more than she gains. She loses her child care. Is that the dumbest system you've ever heard in your life? We should be encouraging people to be able to get out of poverty by letting them advance. And we gotta make sure that developmentally disabled are fully integrated. And for our minority community, not many of whom, but some of whom feel the system does not just work for them, but it works against them, we need harmony in this country. And we need to remember we're Americans before we're anything else. And finally, I want you all to know that as I continue to pursue this campaign, I am not going to take the low road to the highest office in the country. Questions. You know, I never like to take the first question of the hand that goes up. Have you been thinking about this all night long? Okay, what time did you get here? Makes me very nervous. Okay, give him the microphone.
Governor, last night, Marco Rubio ended his campaign, so I'm shopping for a new candidate to support that's not named Donald Trump. I'm in high school right now. I'm 18. I just registered to vote for the first time.
Wait a minute. You're supposed to be in school. What the heck is going on? Where's the truant officer?
My mom was willing to sign me out because she thinks you're the adult in the room.
Okay.
So I'm a young Republican, and like many young Republicans who are now entering into the party, I'm very fiscally conservative, however, more moderate on certain social issues and other topics that are coming up. I mean, this race has not shown that there is a place for that young Republican in the current Republican Party. So as leadership of the party, and possibly as our next president, how would you say that young members of the Republican Party who want to be fiscally conservative but moderate on social issues, where is our representation?
Yeah, well, did you just hear what I've been talking about for the last 20 minutes?
Of course.
I mean, what is it you didn't hear? We want to make sure we take care of the environment. We want to make sure we lift people, and people of everything. And, you know, look, we all feel, well, you know what? Let's get the economy going. Let's get people work, because that's the most important thing. If you graduate from college and you end up having to live at home, I mean, you know, with big debt, let's get that going. And then we can spend our time fighting about all these other things, you know, and you're 18 years old. Anybody here 21? Okay, we can fight about that over a beer, okay? Can we just do that? And let's get the economy going, and let's not divide ourselves. You know, I've had, you know, I understand young people and their views about gay marriage, okay? They've asked me, I will be the only Republican in American history to have brought this subject up on the stage, okay? And people say, no, they want to know, you know, how do you feel about it? It's been in 2 debates. I said, you know, if you're a cupcake maker and somebody's gay comes in, sell them a cupcake, okay? I mean, sell them a cupcake, all right? Now, so now you're a photographer and people want you to take a picture in the gay wedding. You say, you know, I'm not for that. I don't want to take a picture, okay? For me, find another photographer. You don't have to go into court. I mean, you don't have to sue somebody all the time, because people do have a right to their strong feelings. And look, I think since the Supreme Court ruling, I think things have been pretty calm. And we can't take 2 or 3 things that we read in a newspaper. Oh, and by the way, you know they only put these things in there to give us education. It has nothing to do with eyeballs, by the way, or ratings. It's all serious information. Let's not take a couple things that are an aberration to the way that people are normally running their lives and go make another law. Can't we just get along? You know, can't we just respect one another's differences? And let me just say, on the environment, I'm the only one that said, yeah, I think human beings do affect climate. Okay, I do. That one's gone over real great for me in the Republican Party, but I got to tell you something. Listen to what I'm going to say now. I have a right to shape what it means to be a conservative and what the Republican Party is all about. I don't have to take orders from anybody else, okay? One last thing to come to you. Now, we don't want to be crazy about the environment here. We want to make sure that we take steps so that we're not throwing your father out of work or your mother out of work when we're doing things that are extreme. We need to develop renewables. We need to have solar, and we need to have wind, and we need to have battery technology and hydrogen, as my friend Bob Walker says. Bob was the chairman of the Science Committee. These are the things that we need to do. Bob Walker's more responsible, I think, for the space station. Is that right, Bob? He forced me to vote for it every year. But, I mean, of course we can get these breakthroughs, and we can have a clean environment and economic growth. Just don't get carried away with stuff. So, look, that's where I am. You know, the great thing is I'm so free. If people like me, that's great. If they don't like me, I'm going to cry. I used to say I cry for 5 minutes. I'll cry for 15, but I'll be okay, okay? So, young man, you just listen to all that, think about it. The one thing that we don't want to buy into, in my opinion, is this idea of socialism and free stuff. And come on, that's just you know that Bernie's biggest supporters are the, you do know they're the owners of Ben & Jerry's, right? Do you all know that? Yes. And by the way, they live in Vermont. I was in Vermont. I got lost, and I stopped. There was this guy on the corner. I said, sir, have you lived here your whole life? He said, not yet. Anyway, I think we should try this free stuff for 1 year. Ben & Jerry's free for 1 whole year. Okay? What do you think? All right, right here.
And Governor, I can see that young gentleman sitting in your office in a year. I'm sure you know the press now labels you, even Fox News labels you, the last establishment candidate. That infuriates me because I know your record. How do you feel about that label?
Well, if they're saying it because they're being complimentary, I like it. If it's not, then I don't. See, here's the thing. Growing up in this little town is such a great question. I hope I can say this right. With that mom and dad in that town where if the wind blew the wrong way, people found themselves out of work. The only person that gives me orders is my wife, okay? She's the only one that tells me what to do. And let me tell you that my job is to look at a problem and fix it. So, what do you think the establishment thought when there was a President Bush budget, a Democrat budget, a Black Caucus budget, and a Kasich budget? What do you think they thought about that? Think they liked it? What do you think they thought when I found, I don't know if you know about this, well, I'll tell you about the big one. We had this thing called the B-2 bomber. The Pentagon, the Republicans wanted to build 132 of them. You know what its job was? Its initial job was to fly inside the Soviet Union in the middle of a nuclear war and drop more nuclear weapons. And I'm like, well, how many nuclear weapons do you have to have dropped to ruin your day, you know? So I tried to put a limit on it. I wanted to build 13. The Pentagon wanted 132. The entire defense industry was involved in this program. And they spread it all over the country. They put the windshield wipers in Pennsylvania. They put the tires over in Utah. They put the tail section out in California. Now, we ended up, after a long fight, I didn't win. I wanted 13, they wanted 132, and we had to give them 20. Now, let me ask you a question. How much do you think the establishment liked what I was doing when I did that? I was for reforming corporate welfare, which we got done to some degree, because I said if we're going to reform welfare for poor people, we ought to reform welfare for rich people, okay? So I got invited to the Business Roundtable. This is the muckety-muck of all the muckety-mucks, okay? And I went to this thing in Washington. And I got up to speak, and they invited me there because I was on this thing about corporate welfare. And I got up and I said, you know, if I didn't have this proposal to deal with corporate welfare, I would not be speaking here, nor would I be eating. I would be serving the meal in this restaurant, where we are. See, I don't really care about shaking things up as long as I'm on the right track. You know, if I'm on the wrong track, I got to have friends and smart people around me that say, you're wrong. I'm willing to listen too, but there's no, like, orthodox that I have to, I'm an unorthodox political figure. And that's why I've been in politics all these years, and I'm still idealistic, because I believe we can change the world, both, you know, at the high levels, but most important, where we live. So maybe I'm the one person that's running that, number one, I know this is true, I'm the only one that can win a general election. These folks aren't going to win a general election. And secondly, there's a second part to it too. It's more important that we get the country fixed than to score political points. Okay, I'm not interested in that. That's why I have good relations across the aisle. So, okay, way in the back, sir. Way in the back. I haven't had a woman yet. I'm going to get a woman right here, and then I'll come back to you way in the back.
Hi, my name is Haley Faust, and I'm a sophomore at Villanova. And I'm going to ask you the most important question you'll probably be asked all day. How far do you have Villanova going in your bracket?
See, I have Xavier, I have Dayton. No, you know what? I have a friend, a great friend, whose daughter went to Villanova. I've been following Villanova basketball forever. And I remember was his name, look, I don't have any notes, Raleigh Massanino, wasn't he the co-chair? Didn't they win the national title? Hey, I think you're going to do great. You know what's impressive to me is how that every year in and year out, look at last year, right? Great team again. I mean, it's always really good. So do I think you could win it all? I do. I think that it is very close this year, but I have to tell you, in terms of, you know, am I filling out this and am I watching? I've been a little bit busy. Okay? But good luck. Get through the first game, okay? Yes, young lady right here. Then we're coming back here. Hold on. We're going to go right here, and then we're going to come here.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm a freshman at Villanova right now. So, as president, would you try to destroy ISIS or contain it as the current administration has done?
Oh, boy. No, the reason I breathe like that is I didn't finish the article. I didn't think I needed to. But on Sunday's New York Times front page story about the 16-year-old girl and 16-year-old girls. Do you know what the story was about? I don't even want to talk about it. Just brutally raped, given these young women, you know, ways in which they can avoid being pregnant as they rape them repeatedly. Like women are to be used as property. I mean, it's just so disgusting. It's beyond, can you even believe it? I mean, they cut off your head, they rape you, they beat you, and they're just about the sickest group of people we've ever seen on the face of this earth. So, you know, look, I served for 18 years on the Defense Committee, and then I was in after 9/11 with Secretary Rumsfeld asked me to help out on some things. And I've never seen an enemy quite like this. Well, we had an enemy in World War II like that. But this is an enemy post-World War II we've never seen. You can normally, like, let's negotiate. We'll give you 3 cities, right? There's no negotiation with these folks. So we have to destroy them. And this is the troubling thing when we hear that we need to just ban all Muslims from coming to America. Like, you know, you're a Muslim, therefore you're evil, okay? We know that extreme Islam is evil, but we do not believe that all Muslims. There's so many peace lovers. The Muslims are fighting in the war right now for the United States. So let's stop demonizing them. So here's what we do. We get the Muslim Arabs. Who are they? They're the Saudis, the Egyptians, the Jordanians, the Gulf states, and we combine them. You know, maybe we'll get some others from around the world, and then we get our friends in Europe who are really at risk. I mean, think about Paris. It's unbelievable. And we have to go in the air and on the ground, and we have to destroy them. And then once they're destroyed and things settle down, we come home. I don't want to be over there trying to write the lines of what those countries look like, because we did that after World War I, and they screwed the whole thing up, okay? Let them figure it out. Come home, and we should not be in civil wars. When we go somewhere, it ought to be our direct interest. We should go take care of business and come home. And that's kind of the way I look at it.
Governor Kasich, today Barack Obama put forward a Supreme Court nominee. The GOP senators have said they won't even have hearings going forward. What advice would you have for those senators who have said they won't listen, won't have hearings? And then what do you think that says going forward for you in your 8th year as president, when you may or may not have to deal with a Senate from the other side of the aisle?
Well, I think that the members of the United States Senate are anxiously awaiting my advice. Okay? Number two, look, when Scalia died that night, I immediately came to my mind, because everybody's like, well, you should say this, you should say this. There's one thing you know in a political campaign: you never get enough opinions or enough advice, okay? Never do. Look, the president has failed in this. You cannot stiff the legislative body that you have to work with. You just can't do that. And he has had no relationship with them. He got Obamacare, not one vote. Then he did executive orders, which he shouldn't have done either. He should have worked with the Congress, because there were things that I think they could have done. But it's a total breakdown down there. And I'm not telling you that the Republicans are innocent. I mean, we had a guy, a congressman, sitting in the State of the Union speech and yelled to the President of the United States, "You lie." And then he put out a fundraising letter the next day and made money on it, okay? So there's enough guilt to go around. What I felt should have happened is I didn't think the president should send anybody up now, because it's not going to happen. It's just more division. Now we have more fighting, more fighting, more fighting. I think that a president can send a nominee up in their last year. It's like I'm worried about what I'm going to do in 7 years, but the fact is that when you have somebody that has created this complete polarization, and now I'm reading, by the way, in the paper that the Republicans in the House can't even get together to figure out how to pass a budget. I mean, it's like a total meltdown. So, sir, look, I want to tell you a story. When I became governor, I got to deliver this State of the State address. I used to be an aide in the legislature, okay? Then I became a member of the legislature, and it was like, wow, I'm working with these people I used to work for. And then I become a congressman, and then I leave, and then I become governor, and this is like the grand moment. You walk down the center aisle, and they all stand and cheer. They don't mean it, but they do. They all stand and cheer, okay? And so I'm up on the dais. I've since, by the way, taken the State of the State out of the state capitol. I go out in the little cities to do it. But I get up there, and I'm, here I am, and this Democrat legislator, this woman, gets up, storms out on me, walks out in the middle of my speech, and leads a protest against me in the Capitol. So 2 months later, she wants to have a meeting with me. So my staff says, we're not going to meet with her. I said, oh, no, bring her in. So she comes in, and we sit there. I said, what's on your mind? She said, well, we have a problem with kids being human trafficked in Ohio. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like 1,000 kids. I don't remember the numbers anymore. 1,000 to 2,000 kids, 13, 14, 15 boys and girls grabbed, put into the sex trade business, drugged, all this stuff. I said, well, I didn't know that was happening in Ohio. I knew it was happening around the world. She said, it's happening in Ohio. And I said, well, what are you doing about it? She said, well, I have legislation. I said, how's your legislation going? She goes, well, not that great. And I said, okay, well, why don't I take your legislation, we'll look at it, we'll fix it, prove it, and then we'll pass it. And she was staring at me. And I went, hello, are you still with me? She said, you would really pass it. Well, 30, 60 days later, we passed this legislation. We passed subsequent legislation. And the most important thing about it is, in the past, if you were put out on the streets as a prostitute in the sex trade business, if you got caught, you were a criminal. Now you're a victim, and the John out there is the criminal. We're going to lock you up and throw away the key for a good long time. Now, if I hadn't had a meeting with that lady, you got to figure out how to get along with people in both parties, okay? You just have to. So, the hallmark I'm going to have, sir, is getting along with people. But you know, if I think I'm going to blow something up by sending something in the 7th year, I wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't do it. I think this is not good for our country. It's a roving debate. Both sides, hands are guilty, and it's where we are. That's why I'm running for president, to bring people together and fix these things instead of fighting with one another all the time. That's what I really want to do. Okay, I can take one more, and then I guess I have to go. Shrimp, you picked the last one. I know, I'm sorry. I wish I could be here all day. Okay, right there. Wow. Come on up here, kid. This better be good. Slip under that rope. Come on up here. Is that Puma? That's very cool. I think so. You got, yes, okay, so. This is your big moment, okay? What is your name?
Jack Shapiro.
Josh, is it?
Jack.
Jack. Oh, Jack. Mine's John, but you can call me Jack, okay? How old are you, Jack?
I'm 11 years old.
11 years old. Who you here with?
Of course, my mom's taking me here.
Mom, you... Yeah, you know what this reminds me of? This is like my girl said, Daddy, can you give us more snow days? I said, why were you asking me? Because you're the governor, John, Dad. Okay, no, we need to have a video.
It wasn't my idea. Honestly, I begged you to bring them, and
Well, who's in charge of this family? Jack, I gotcha. All right, Jack, we're going to get a video of this because this is one you'll keep. Are you getting a little bit of video? Okay, what do you want to know, Jack?
In terms of your strategy for defeating ISIS, to what extent would American personnel be involved?
Okay. Let me give you some advice. When you're on the stage, don't get off voluntarily. Make them push you off the stage, okay? So, Jack, we're going to have to be in the air. And then we're going to have to be on the ground. And Americans are going to have to be there. You know why? Because nobody else is going to do this. See, it's sort of like, do you play basketball? What's your sport?
Let's just say for basketball.
This kid's got a future. Jack, what I'm saying is that, you know, sometimes when you have certain skills or you're certain, when you got really strength, sometimes you got to shoulder more than everybody else. You have to step up, because if you don't step up, the rest of the team's not going to step up. Okay, that's really what it just gets down to. And America's not really been stepping up. So here's the problem. You read these stories in the paper, what I mentioned about the young women who are, do you have a sister?
No.
Okay, but let me say that the young women who are, imagine taking somebody you love, who's a woman, and taking her somewhere and having some evil man just beat her to a living pulp. I mean, that's just wrong. Or, you know, these people, like if there's a great monument or something, Jack, they'll go and they'll blow it up. They hate people that don't think like they do. And even if you're a Muslim and you don't think the way they do, they cut your head off. You know that that's going on, right? I don't like to talk to a young person, but you got to know this. So there's evil. And when there's evil in the world, it has to be destroyed. And I want to give you I'm going to give you an example, Jack. The problem is, Jack, that that man is capable of great good and great evil. So you think about the fact that there was a time when the Nazis would find out that you were a Jew, they'd take you and they put you in a prison concentration camp, and then maybe they take you and they kill you. We can't tolerate that, can we? And you know what? We weren't able to win that until the United States stepped in. That's exactly right. And the fact is that The problem we have, Jack, is that sometimes there's evil in the world, because there's evil so many places, that we can't wipe it all out, because then we wear ourselves out and we become a policeman, and we can't do that. But America's got a great responsibility, because the world, whether they like it or not, the world depends on us. And so it means we're going to have to do more than what we think we should, and more than sometimes we want to. Now, some people who run for public office want to say, we're not going anywhere, we're not doing anything, it's none of our business. To whom much is given, remember this thing, because Jack, you're obviously a talented young man. To whom much is given, much is expected. So here's what I want you to do. You see that guy back there with that camera and that red light on? Walk right back there to him, and maybe I'll write you a note, okay? And your mom will really appreciate it. Okay? All right, you head right back there and we'll get this all figured. Give a hand to Jack. I have to go. Yeah, kid, never know where he's going to end up, huh? That's such a big experience for 11 years old. Up there on a podium is something he'll remember forever. I'm thrilled that he came up. So here's the situation. I have to go. We have an election coming up. And if you didn't like me today, just don't tell anybody. Just say you didn't even come. But if you like me, there will be a way for you to help me, and particularly with a vote, but more than that. The reason why we won Ohio, and we won, by the way, by 11 points, okay? The reason we won is because of the grassroots. And you know what? Isn't it interesting? For the first time, people are actually beginning to see my name, my face, and hear my message, because I labored in obscurity. But this is not about me. This is about how we want our country to feel. This is why I like the town halls, because you get a sense to judge. And if you didn't like me, that's cool, but I'd rather you know who I am than to just pop out here, make some talk, I'm out of here, and then, okay, so you got a chance to see a little bit. And if you like me, we need your help. Just give us a little bit of time. And I guess I'm not going to be any more overtly political than to say, help if you can. I love being here. This was a great honor for me to be here, and I want to thank you all very much, and God bless.